Hi, guys. Welcome, Mr. Marcus, to Liz and Liz Get Literary.
Thanks for having me.
And are we correct that it's Kliewer?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm sure you get
Nice.
that literally every time you speak with someone, so we just wanted to be sure.
Appreciate it.
Okay, as we've said before in the other parts, this book has completely taken over our lives in the best way. So we're going to jump right on in. Do you want to take the first question?
I would absolutely love to. And just as a side note, so that you are aware, Marcus, for the last two episodes of Liz and Liz Get Literary, Liz and I, and additionally some of our mystery thriller book club friends, have talked for, I think, a combined 11 or 12 hours about every page. Let's just show you. This is my annotation tabs
Oh my god.
coded by like character, conspiracy theory, translations, Reddit. It's been a hot mess. Also,
I'm so sorry.
I think I gave my phone a virus trying to go on the old house archive, which we'll get into. But we have been really excited. So thank you for writing maybe the most viral book in your genre.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, as most of the internet and book community is aware, this novel, We Used to Live Here, started out as a thread on Reddit. Did that kind of like transpire into a novel originally or organically, or did you always want it to be a book?
So it started, there's an even earlier precursor to the Reddit series, which was a one-parter that was much, much darker, if you can imagine that. And I was writing a bunch of stories on Reddit, and around that time, some big Hollywood producer guys reached out to me and were like, "What are you working on? Like, do you want to try selling something to Netflix?" So once I made sure I wasn't getting scammed, I kind of sent them a list of some things that I had been working on, and one of them was an expanded version of that short because it was my most popular story at the time. But it really wasn't on my radar becoming a novel until there was a big Netflix deal and all that. And then they were like, well, we can ship this as a novel as well and get you a whole book deal out of it, which, yeah, was really cool. And yeah, so it was kind of a surprise, but also kind of makes sense once it all happened, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really interesting. I'm not sure if we've spoken to any authors where it was a movie deal and a book kind of like combo. That's really interesting. And especially to have the movie kind of first, that's really cool. Can you talk a little bit about the Reddit of it all? Like, were you a long time no sleep lurker, or did you put it on there kind of in succession with the rest of your deals?
Yeah, so I've been reading stories from No Sleep since, oof, oh my God, like 2008 or something. I don't, like
Same.
way, way back. And then I think the first thing I ever posted was around 2014. I'm sure people could dig it up if they really tried. I don't know if I want them to, but, and it was on a different account from the one I'm using now. And then I stopped writing on there for probably 6, 7 years, and it wasn't until COVID hit that I got back into it. And consequently, I got back into it because I saw a news article about people writing a story on No Sleep and selling it to Netflix. And I thought, oh, well, I used to do pretty good on that subreddit. I should get back on there. Maybe these people will reach out to me and it'll sell to Netflix, kind of in the back of my mind. And I got super lucky, and that's exactly what happened. But yeah, I've been a long time lurker and a long time sporadic writer on the subreddit.
I love that. As a side question, are you down the Baraska rabbit hole?
Yes, I know. I know Baraska. I'm a huge fan of Rebecca Klingel, and um, her story, like Mayhem Mountain, which is like a roller coaster horror.
Yes.
Yeah, she's
Yes.
massively influential on me. Even Haunting of Hill House, which she wrote on the TV
Mm-hmm.
show, was massively influential on me, as well as the original novel, of course. But yeah, she's incredible writer, and one of the only writers who could handle such a dark topic in a responsible way, I think. So yeah.
Totally. I 100% agree. The reason I wanted to ask you about Baraska is because, number one, that's like the thing that keeps me up at night every single night. I'm obsessed with it. I tell everyone I've ever met, I made Liz like listen to me for hours and hours and hours talking about Nebraska. And when I was reading We Used to Live Here, I was like, this is kind of like giving Rebecca in the most flattering way possible, like super original, but I could see hints of Nebraska in there, I felt like. And I was just immediately enthralled. So just wanted to check on that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely influenced by her, and it's an honor to even be mentioned in the same sentence as her. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, Liz G is very much a part of like the whole Reddit scene and reading all of these things. Whereas I tend to be like, that is none of my business.
She's a little scared. I have to
I,
give her like
Right.
a toned down version. So
yeah, when we were recording our first little dive into We Used to Live Here, I kept thinking like, I'm not okay. This is not okay. I need to
hmm
go.
yeah, we all talked for so long too, our book club, that we all went home and we were asking our partners, just like Eve, how did we meet? And like, what was our first date? Where were
Right.
we? Like, what tattoo do I have on my left thigh? And like, we convinced ourselves that we had been taken into the old house. So
Yeah, my husband is not a reader. And I got him to read We Used to Live Here. I said, "Listen, I really think this is going to be up your alley." And he comes out of it and he's just like, "Well, I think that everybody just has like schizophrenia." And I was like, "Well, that's not okay. Thank you."
he's like, and that's just how I'm gonna fall asleep at night, is
Yeah,
telling
yeah.
myself that it's just,
Right.
Yeah. And then I was like, "Well, are you real?" And he goes, "We are not starting this shit. What we're not going to do."
Yeah,
So
fair
I
enough.
wanted to kind of ask you actually a little bit about like the Netflix of it all. How you said you had to expand a little bit. How much did you actually change from the original story? I know you said it was much darker, but what was that process like expanding it and making it even more?
So yeah, I guess I expanded it twice, right? So I did it from a one-parter to a four-part to a novel, and it's not not ideal. Like I'm very much a discovery type writer, so having to reverse engineer things I've written. This first time I did it from the short to the series was fine because I'd wanted to that's something I've been planning to do anyways, but doing it from the short or sorry, doing it from the series to the novel was very difficult. And yeah, very just the analogy I've used it was like trying to take a car I've already built and turn it into a bus. Like it's very, I'm a very editor-minded writer. I like cutting things. I like making things as close to the bone and as fast-paced as possible. So trying to maintain that level of tension for literally four times the length was difficult. And I don't think I fully achieved that, and I don't think that would be possible. But yeah, it's a tricky thing to do. And the original short, which I'm sure people can like, I think there's a few YouTube narrations of it. I don't know if I recommend going to it because
there are.
it's messed up. It goes really quick. Like the family shows up at the door and things kind of turn topsy turvy almost immediately. But the actual overall structure and arc is very similar to the novel and the series. But yeah, there may be some animals that get hurt in that version. I didn't have a dog at the time, so I think yeah, I didn't realize how traumatizing that can be to people to have dogs get hurt. Which, fair
I
enough. I
want you to
love
know
dogs,
you said you
but
don't know if you succeeded in book. I was stressed from page one. So I just want you to know that. Like you succeeded in the tension and everything.
Yeah,
that's good.
but additionally, I think like what you're saying, because most no sleep is like pedal to the metal. It's like write a few hundred words, and it's the scariest thing you've ever read. So I understand. I think if you would have made the entire book that way, though, people would have needed to sign a waiver. So I think it is exactly paced as how it should be. I'm not sure if the normal thriller reader could take much more than what you gave in the book series. I think it was perfect.
Right, that's good to hear.
So, is there anything that you could share about what we can expect from Netflix? I know it's going to be a movie, correct? Not a series?
A movie, yeah.
Okay, and is it in production? Are we allowed to know that?
Yeah, I mean it's Hollywood, so there's always ups and downs and all that stuff in between. So I'm very much kind of by choice disconnected from that world. Like I just kind of I'll check in with my manager every once in a while on it, but I find it too stressful. It's too much of an emotional roller coaster to constantly be getting updates. But things are
Totally.
happening, and it looks like it's definitely going to get made one way or another. It's just, Hollywood is going to Hollywood and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty much as I can say on it. But
Do you mind if we now kind of get into a little bit of the book?
yeah, go for it.
Perfect. We did tell the listeners, if you haven't read it, stop at the intro and read it. So we are going to be spoiling if you're cool with that.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so because I'm a scaredy cat, I'm gonna go first. So let's start with the house itself is obviously like a key point of the book. And it seems to shift at key moments. Is it does it have its own intelligence? Is it its own entity, or is it something inside, or is there like an outside source causing the house to shift as much as it does? Because I feel like we see quite a few different versions of just the house.
I'm careful to not give away things because some of it I'm still also figuring out. Like I have a lot of these things, I have like two or three potential background hard lore that I will do, but I'm also weighing it based on what people figure out. But I think I'll talk about it this way. I really want to avoid. There's something about like Chronicles of Narnia is a good example, right? Where they go into the little wardrobe and they're in this world and it feels very separate from the world and it's very clean and tidy. And that's cool, but for me there's something much more eerie about it not necessarily always being a doorway that you go through. Like maybe it's a certain thought that gets into your head and that's what makes you go into Old House, or maybe it's maybe it's just walking past a tree and there's not really this moment of crossing a threshold, even though a lot of the theories are talking about like the dumbwaiter being a portal and like all this kind of stuff. The more I think about it and the more I kind of build out the background lore in my head, I think there's a very psychological aspect to it. Even though what Eve is going through is real that's how I intended it to be. She's not dealing with schizophrenia or anything. I also think there's something about it, like your mind also affects what Old House is. I don't know if any of that makes any sense, but yeah, it's something I'm still kind of figuring out and solidifying. And like I have a whole Bible of lore and background stuff that's always changing and always shifting. But yeah, as to the house being an entity itself, I wouldn't answer that one way or the other. I will say this, there's a lot of people trapped in Old House that don't know they are, and they can go their entire lifetime without knowing that. And they can die and they can live a perfectly normal life. At least that's a theory out there about it. So I'm never willing to commit to anything, and I think I'll always be that way. I think even when a theory is presented or an answer, quote unquote, is given, it will always be with the caveat of this is the best potential theory, which is honestly just kind of like real life. Like we can't, even with the scientific method, we can't really be certain of anything. So yeah.
That checks because I had said before in one of our episodes that we talked about that I wondered if, like, if Eve, for instance, just kind of stayed ignorant to the changes and to what was kind of going on, would she be experiencing what she was experiencing?
Right.
So the fact that there are probably people who have no idea that they like
Mm-hmm.
switched realities.
Right. Or how long have Eve and Charlie been in the Old House network and we just pick up the book when Thomas decides to play? You know? So there's a lot going on. That's a great answer. So perfect. I like that you're just chronically evasive. That brings me joy.
Yeah, I could be a politician at this point.
Honestly, and I love that though, because if we had everything solved, would it be as fun? I don't know.
I mean, I would feel better,
I would not.
but I understand that I'm probably not going to feel great after this anyway. So
The example I always use is from Lord of the Rings. I think it might be Fellowship of the Ring, where Gandalf says something about there's like old things at the bottom of the seas that don't have names, and like Tolkien went to his grave never explaining what those were, and I think that kind of it's frustrating for a lot of people, and I empathize with that frustration. But I think you surrender something once you fully solidify it. You surrender
Yeah.
the fear of the unknown,
Yep.
which can be a cop out and it can be a storytelling crutch. But I'd rather, I don't know. It's just the kind of stuff I like, you know. So I want to
Yeah,
write first and foremost. Like if I enjoy it, I know other people will, you know.
for sure.
No, I mean, you're doing like amazing work. The fact that we're just feeling the way we feel is absolutely. I was like, this is a 5-star read, and I did not think I would because I don't like conspiracy because I freak myself out. But I'm like, I actively think about your book every day, multiple times a day.
True.
So, and I think also you're never going to figure out everything. So, leaving some things up for debate
Yeah.
and to contemplate it is very good work as well.
Yeah. Eternal deliberation is just kind of like life. So, yeah, I love it. And obviously, we're all chronically online here at Liz and Liz Get Literary. We spent an obscene amount of time analyzing theories of our own, theories of our book clubs, and I think I probably have at least 70 Reddit tabs open just on like old house archive threads and websites and looking at the monkey toys. It's just been a whole thing. Do you keep up with all of the discussions and theories on Old House Archive, or how much of the alternate reality games do you maybe potentially influence?
I do keep up. So Reddit is like hard blocked on all my devices because I have like actual diagnosed ADHD and I just have no self control. So I need to like have it blocked or I'll just fall down that infinite scrolling rabbit hole. But my sibling who does a lot of the ARG stuff and then some other friends of mine will like they'll send me screen caps of certain threads every once in a while. And it's always super fascinating. And it's cool like seeing some people figure things out. It's cool seeing people come up with ideas better than what I had planned. So it will definitely influence a lot of things. Like I think somebody said, this is one of the few that I will ever admit to, but it was something about Stray Dog Summit being like, oh, lots of people go missing there, so that's why there's so many stray dogs. And it just seems so obvious, but I never really thought of that when I wrote that. So it's one that I'm going to incorporate and make it seem like I had planned it all along, even though I hadn't, you know. So
Listen, Taylor Swift does the same thing. She says, like, sometimes you guys give me Easter eggs, and then I'm like, you know what? Hell yeah. Like, that's what we're doing. I
yeah,
love that. So, perfect.
Okay. So we kind of have like some very specific questions. And again, I feel like you're really good at being evasive. So obviously you don't have to answer. Um, but we're going to try as hard as we can.
yeah, go
So
for
just
it.
heads up. I'm not scared. I'm scared of the book. I'm not scared of this. So, um, I want to talk about the doors. I know you said that all of the doors are not portals, but it's very clear in the book that some doors very much are. Does the color of the doors matter? Because I cataloged like the bone white door, red door, green doors, and we see other red door, green doors, white doors later. How much, I guess, does the color affect everything?
First and foremost, when I'm writing a color, I'm trying to evoke an emotion in that scene. So like bone white is just, to me, that's just a great word. I just love that word because it puts such a great image into the reader's head. And then I'll kind of reverse engineer meaning out of that after I've chosen the colors. So sometimes I'll go around and swap the colors. I know people talk about green and blue a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And all I will say is there's some like very, very deep lore that I have built around a lot of this stuff that's like just kind of insane and might even be its entire own series. But it's something that, again, even if I were to give those answers, it would still be a theory. Like a lot of these theories are these characters presenting them within the world as well, which kind of, I guess, ties into the Reddit, the subreddit, because it's like these are just people presenting their theories. And within the world, I don't think I'm ever going to write outside the perspective of normal human beings. So I don't think I'll write from the perspective of some like all-knowing God character. So we'll probably never know within the world, but we'll have, like I said, we'll have theories and we'll have answers that get us pretty close to what the actual thing might be. But yeah, there is intentionality behind some of it.
I knew it. I have tabs for every time you mention red and green and white and blue. Specifically what I come back to over and over. I'm so sorry, but I'm gonna try. In the hallway of the neighbor, there is a bone white door and a red phone. And in the basement of the old house, is the bone white door and the red lantern on the floor. Also, and like, okay, you cannot answer this question, but I just want to know if there was an attempt at a replacement ritual when she was trying to get Eve to answer the phone and Eve decided to take Shiloh and leave.
I'm not going to say one way or the other, but I will say there's like a whole thing I have planned for Heather that kind of came out of that scene. And like, to me, that scene in early drafts was the least tense scene in the book. And so I was just like, it really, and it is a bit of an exposition dump as well. And so I was trying to find a way to up the tension in that scene and bring that kind of paranoia and anxiety into the scene, even though it was, I guess, less extreme. Although I've heard some people say that scene stressed them out more than any other scene in the book. I certainly didn't intend that. But yeah, there was intentionality behind what's going on with Heather. Whether it's a ritual replacement, whether it's something else entirely, who knows? But I will say there are clues to it in the notes on the old house as well. There are parallels of different types of things, I guess. That's as specific as I can be. But yeah, there is something going on there.
Okay, and honestly, that's enough for me. Like I said, if it was fully solved, I would kind of feel a little bit sad. So I'm just happy to know that we were at least on some sort of realm,
Right.
on that being like a hook or a replacement ritual scenario. So thank you.
I would like to jump to Eve a little bit. I have some questions about her. First question: has Eve been trapped longer than just this reality we watched her go through? Longer.
It's a very interesting theory, for sure. I don't want to confirm it one way or the other. There's an interesting thing with theories and figuring things out, because technically the better something is written, the easier it will be for people to figure it out, in a sense. So like, the example would be like a great twist. When it happens, you're like, oh my god, of course, how did I not see it earlier? You know, like you go back, your mind kind of hits every moment that the twist was foreshadowed. And I don't necessarily think We Used to Live Here has that. I think the twists are fun, don't get me wrong, but they're kind of insane. With some exceptions. There's definitely setup that I put in there, but there's like, it's so left field that like anybody that would be able to predict what was going on, it's not. I'd be shocked if they read the book and were like, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen by the end. So yeah, that's not answering your question at all, but I will say it's a very interesting theory, and it's one that I like quite a bit, whether it's real or not. So
I made note a couple of times where you write that she has phrases and words that feel familiar. And so to me, I connected that to kind of like the deja vu sense, which is such a wide conspiracy feeling type deal. And so I wondered if it was a deja vu in the sense of like, you know, she's been stuck in this loop almost for a while. Is sticking Are we going to continue to get everything from Eve's perspective? I know you said that you want to continue to write from normal people, but are we going to get a different conclusion to Eve's story, or can you confirm or deny that?
whether or not there's going to be a direct sequel highly depends on if I can come up with the story that feels like it's good enough and justified to write. I want to be very careful with anything that takes away from the scares of the first one. So that's kind of my first prerequisite for writing a sequel, is is this going to diminish the first book in any way? And if it will, then that's going to be barring me from doing it. But I already have some pretty solid ideas of what shape a sequel could take, and the last post in the book, you could say, is a pretty good foreshadowing of the type of story it might be and whose perspective it might be from. But I think, and I would even be very clear to the marketing team on it to be like, this, we cannot market this as like, oh, this is going to be all the answers you've been waiting for. It's like, no, I think this book is going to be, it will answer some things and then it will provide even more confusion on a lot of other things. Like it's, and I think I'm concerned it might be, it'll be a lot darker based on some of the ideas I have. And so it'll be interesting to see how much of the fan base is able to migrate to it, because I know the book is already teetering on that edge of horror and thriller, and there's people that, you know, can only tolerate so much, and what is too much and all that. So it's something I'm navigating. It's not generally something I'm too concerned about when I'm writing. It's just kind of like, is it working for me, and is it working for my close friends that do read-throughs? And if it's working, then I know it'll work for other people. But yeah, another kind of non-answer for you there. But I definitely have plans that will take fruition, but, you know, I'm not putting any sort of timeline on it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think your answer of like who essentially is going to stick around if it gets darker, I can speak for at least our entire book club that we will be on the front row of that roller coaster and ready to spiral eternally with you in this archive. So I'm
Yeah.
ready.
And I'm not a
Yeah.
I'm not a horror girly. I tend to kind of shy away from that. And when I thought about you potentially putting out a sequel and stuff, I said it's gotta get darker. You know what I mean? That's like a natural consequence to kind of what you've been building.
Yeah.
So I think it would be expected almost.
Mhm.
At least that's how I felt. So
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I don't think there's anything that I have planned that would be so shocking. Like, it's just going to be more extreme versions of what's already in there. Like, there's a moment near the end with Thomas and a hammer that's, you know, pretty intense. And that was almost kind of a test for a way to be like, what I want to write in the future, if people can handle that scene, then they should be able to handle everything else. It just might be more. Not that it's going to be a gore fest or anything like that, but I think Old House gets really, really, really fucked up the deeper you go into it, and
That's
some
what
of
I'm
that will
hoping
be
for.
explored for sure.
That's honestly what I'm wishing. I love that you're like, okay, so where on the spectrum of Scream to Terrifier will these people go with me? And I love that. I'm excited.
Nice.
I watched Paranormal Activity when it came out, and I slept with my mom for like 3 months because I was so scared. And yes, I was in my 20s, and I'm not ashamed. So I'm just planning on maybe having to do that with these books. So it's fine. It'll be fine.
It'll be great.
It'll be great.
This is not on the question list that we sent you, so I'm really sorry, but I just would love to hear anything that you are willing to share with us. Your thought process maybe behind this character, because he is a character, or anything that you have tidbit wise. I would love to discuss Mo.
Yeah, for sure. Mo came, I mean, Toy Story 3, obviously, I've only seen it once, but the way he was used really stood out to me. And then there's a game called Fallout 4 that I played, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, a decade ago now. And they would have those little jolly chimps hidden around the map. So you'd be kind of walking through like a sewer, and then all of a sudden you'd hear these cymbals clanging, and you turn around and there'd be a little jolly chimp sitting there. And I guess even now there's that new movie that just came out called The Monkey that is based around an evil jolly chimp. So it's just a creepy friggin' toy, and I find it easier to write with dialogue. And so when I have these long stretches of a character who's by themselves the entire book, how do I get kind of a back and forth in there? And bringing Mo as this kind of voice of paranoia, and then Charlie to kind of counter that was a way to do that, and then also build Charlie as a character who is barely has any screen time, for lack of a better term, in the reader's head. But yeah, it was a crazy thing, and he almost got cut multiple times because I was worried he was a bit too crazy, and um, I'm glad I kept him because a lot of people love him. There's people that hate him, but he's in the book.
I love that. I think every time she would have that kind of thing where Mo was like, they're never gonna leave, and then she would have Charlie. I was picturing like the angel and the devil on the shoulder. And that kind of seems like Mo's MO, right? Mo is to like give the worst case scenario at all times, and we honestly need that in our horror heroines. I feel they often need someone to be like, "Bestie, this is a terrible idea." And I
Right.
like that Mo brings that to the table. I was watching your interview with Chills and Quills, and I saw that he wanted you to write a book from Mo's perspective, and that killed me because that would be a wild ride.
But yeah, and then it was also an easy way to bring in the Mandela effect and the memory stuff to have the toy and all that. And
Yeah.
I think too, going into theories, it's a way to in Get Out. I don't remember the character's name, but it's the protagonist's friend, the TSA agent, who
Mm-hmm.
is always calling him and being like, "Oh, these people are like hypnotizing you. They're using you for like." He's providing all the exact theories that the audience is thinking of, and it's a way to acknowledge that while it's happening, and then maybe take the wind out of the sails of some theories that I don't want people to go to, or that I want to direct them to. It's a way to kind of provide a voice for the audience in a strange little character. Yeah.
Yeah, a very smart plot device instead of just having Eve, because she's already paranoid, she's already second guessing herself and everyone else. It would be a lot for her to be the only one. Like, we're just up there with her and all of her own anxieties and paranoia. So, even though he was like a part of her inner monologue, it was refreshing to have a totally different perspective with a little visual to go alongside of it. And additionally, one more follow up about Mo. Why is it that she only sees the correct Mo in Heather's house?
Is it the correct Mo though? Isn't it a jolly chimp? I don't even remember my own book now, but is it a jolly chimp with white fur
Yeah, and
or
then in
something?
Mo says, please hold.
Yeah, let's bring it up.
I have the notes.
Mo just scares me, period. So I pictured more of like in Finding Nemo when they're in the dark and Dory's like, who is that? And then Marlin's like, it's your conscience. We haven't spoken in a while. That's how I pictured Mo,
Oh,
but
with the big fish or whatever?
the anglerfish, yeah.
Right.
Loved that guy.
Okay, so
I thought the Mo in Heather's house was like the Mo that was missing from her childhood, but
I
I
bel
don't know.
I can't remember how I described it, but I think it was supposed to be similar, but not quite the exact same. It was, unless I did an edit I forgot about, but I think it was a jolly chimp, but his fur was white. And is Mo's fur white? I can't remember.
yeah, because
Right.
in the book it says, gosh, I have so many tabs in this
Because
book.
the one that gets
I
brought
think,
up more so than Mo being white is the Toy Story 3 one where it's brown and
yeah.
all of that.
Okay, yeah. So she leans forward and she reaches into the pile to retrieve it, and it is a jolly chimp with a yellow vest and pinstripe pants, but one detail was wrong. His fur was white, just like Mo's. And then Mo says, "Don't lie to yourself. For a second, you thought it was me." And she like makes this weird excuse about how it's her grandson's favorite, and I just was like, I there has to be a very specific reason, and I know you know why he's in her house, specifically Heather's, and not the old house, not the
Right.
cabin, not the hotel. And I just that's why I'm so curious about Mo. Is literally just him and Heather's house sent me into a spiral about this goddamn monkey. So
No comment.
okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask my one question. I have a question about Charlie. Do we ever meet the Charlie that Eve knows?
tangibly.
Initially, I would say the answer was yes, but after reading more theories, I'm kind of leaning towards maybe no. But I think it's something I need to figure out for sure. So I don't really have, even my own answer there kind of shifts based on how people are theorizing it. But my initial
Mm-hmm.
intention when writing was that we at least met her once. But now I've seen theories that are like, oh yeah, I didn't even think of that. That really kind of lean me more to that we didn't meet her. Um, but yeah, uh, it's one I got to figure out. So I'll say that much. Another non-answer.
No, that means that I was reading the book correctly then. So,
Yeah, exactly. Because some of us were like, well, we only think that the last, kind of like document in the book is the real Charlie. And then there's someone in our book club who thinks that that's the real Charlie. And then the phone call from the hotel is the real Charlie. But and everyone just has different theories. Whereas my theory was the only real Charlie was the one on the very first phone call. And then whatever, the portal slash whatever entering Stray Dog Mountain, just got rid of that.
Yeah, and I don't, just going back to portals, I don't mean there's no portals in general. I just think I'm trying to toy with the idea of the crossing the threshold moment where, like, okay, now you're in Old House. It just feels like something we've seen so many times before with the
Mm-hmm.
Chronicles of Narnia and everything. And so I'm trying to find a different way to do that. And I haven't fully even formed it in my own head. But even with alternate realities, I know it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and it's something that I'm trying to find a new angle on. And one of those things is like maybe it's all just one reality building and building and building and building on top of itself. And that's kind of like what's going on, as opposed to like, okay, now I'm in this reality, now I'm in this reality. Maybe it's all just
Mm-hmm.
one thing, and that's a possibility as well. Yeah, I don't necessarily recommend going down the simulation theory rabbit hole, and this definitely isn't a sci-fi Matrix scenario that's going on here, but I kind of went into that rabbit hole and had a bit of an existential spiral, and that definitely informed a lot of the lore around Old House. Again, I don't. This will never be a simulation theory Matrix scenario, but there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
in those theories that is very, very disturbing, and it's interesting to explore for sure.
yeah, the way that I kind of went about this book is there was this one rabbit hole I went down where someone felt that they had jumped realities. And it wasn't that there was like this big change. It was like when she would look at her shelf, there were a couple of things that were just misplaced or maybe a different color. And so every time she would describe, when Eve would describe the house she was in, I kind of tried to pay more attention to that because
Mm-hmm.
you seem to use color so vividly
Mm-hmm.
that I wondered if your shifts were always just kind of minimalistic. It wasn't, I mean, there are some big things like the numbers of the house, um, even like at the very end when we see a completely different house. Obviously, that was a huge shift, but there's different scenes where the house is described as decrepit or abandoned, and then obviously when Eve and Charlie are there, they're working on it, and so I just when you're shifting, it seems like you use very minimalistic type deal, like type
Yeah.
descriptions
Yeah.
sometimes. So,
Like a coat rack, a window,
yeah.
the weather. I could spend a very long time talking about just the
Another
weather.
Another parallel would be the Lord of the Rings movies, especially the first one, where the magic in that is very subtle. Like, you kind of like Gandalf kind of makes himself look taller, and they use a camera lens trick to do that. And there's not this like flashing of lightning and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's what I'm trying to capture. And even with the house changing, I don't even necessarily know if I would want to say the house is changing or if she's just entered a different section. Because to me, I like the idea of it being this physical space that can be mapped out and that doesn't change. Obviously, I'm heavily influenced by House of Leaves and then the back rooms and then even the show Severance, where they're mapping out. I don't want to spoil that show for anybody, but there's this idea of a physical space that builds on itself, and it's confusing, and you end up in a different version of this house. But to me, it's like yes, things can change, but more so it is a static thing, and it's much more satisfying to think about it that way. That old house is a static physical space. That yes, there's things where you open the door, and sometimes it's a staircase, and sometimes it's a stairwell, but there are strong established rules that as long as you follow them, you're fine. But if you step outside those bounds, you take a wrong turn somewhere, then that's where you kind of get into the glitchy, like in a video game when you get outside the area you're supposed to be in the back rooms type thing, and it's like, okay, now I can see the map from outside itself and things are crazy. And when I was a kid, my friends and I were playing Halo 3, and we found this area where you could glitch out of the map, and it was very eerie because you would be going down a hallway in this area you're not supposed to be, and then you would see your friends. We were playing split screen. You would see your friend's screen up on a wall, and it would start fractaling. So it would be like you'd see what they're seeing, their POV, and it would be like repeating itself over and over and over again. And so that kind of out of bounds idea is really inspiring to me. And again, finding a grounded, sort of solid feeling to it all. It's more of a vibe than anything else. Like I can't really articulate it fully, but yeah. Again, I'm trying to avoid the multiverse fatigue. I'm trying to avoid that kind of. I don't want it to become like, oh, here's this version of Charlie that's like the Deadpool Charlie and all that kind of stuff. Like I really want to, and I don't even know if these other versions are real people or if they're, if they're just part of Old House. Like we don't know that. We don't know what any of these versions are. We don't know if it's all just a trick of Old House. We don't know if they can even think or feel, or if they're, so yeah. And again, it's physical space and mental space as well. And so there's like very specific, the deeper you get into this Old House, again, these are all just theories within the universe, but the theories would go that the deeper you get into this place, the more convoluted and more difficult it is to navigate, and you have to follow very specific protocols to maintain staying alive or ending up with a fate far worse than death, Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm just like, I'm spiraling right now. Are there religious components to all parts of the house? So we know Paige has religion. Mm-hmm. She makes mention that Thomas, well, and it's very clear that Thomas isn't as religious as Paige, but even outside of them, for instance, the stained glass window with the trees, the word devil or Satan is used very regularly. Is that the right track? Do you use religious components to the plot as well?
Yes, I use it because that's how, in my mind, as a non-religious person, religion is used to provide shape and meaning to things we can't understand. And I think that's actually a valuable thing for a lot of people. You can come in with an atheist view, which I generally would agree with the more rationalist view, but at the end of the day, it's like an atheist is never going to be able to provide a level of security that a religious belief is going to, whether or not, like an atheist, we're floating through on a rock that at any point could be hit by an asteroid that's floating around a giant star that could explode and all this stuff. Like you can't provide an honest atheist view and calm somebody down. Right. And so even like the concept of free will, if you talk to most top neuroscientists or whatever, they'll tell you that it's an illusion. But you kind of need that illusion, because if you tell everyone free will doesn't exist, then why, now there's way less self-accountability. There's, you have somebody who has dark impulses. They're just going to be like, well, screw it. I don't have free will anyway. Just the belief of free will change the behavior because it's an external, it's an external stimulus that changes how people think. It's the same thing telling you hand somebody water and you tell them after they've drank it that it's full of deathly poison. They are going to start taking on symptoms of being sick. They might even throw up. It could have just been plain water. And so the stories we tell have a huge effect on our mental state. And so that's a long and convoluted way of saying, like, it's important, but it's also not This is not a demon mythology story. I find that strips away a lot of the fear for me. I grew up in a religious environment, weirdly, and so you'd think it would make it scarier. But the second a story tells me that, oh, it's Satan, or it's some ancient spirit from this religion, that just makes it less scary to me, because it's something that we've written about, or we've had rules about, with the exception of Hereditary. For some reason, Hereditary, that made it scarier when they revealed it was a demon. I don't Maybe
Yeah.
because it was a demon I hadn't heard of before, the Prince Paimon, and I think the fact that her mother, spoiler warnings for Hereditary, but the fact that her mother was willing to, ruin her children's life to help release this demon and get wealth for herself added a kind of dark realism to it. But 9 times out of 10, and I don't want to take away from fantastic films like The Exorcist, because those are definitely scary movies, but for me, more and more, uh, solidifying it to a specific religion just makes it less scary. Whereas making it kind of vague and outside of that. I don't know if that even answers what you were asking, but yeah.
No, it definitely does. I think to piggyback off of that, if it was a demon or a specific thing, then you could come up with an answer to the problem. So you could be like, oh, I just need to banish this demon. I need to
Yeah.
destroy this demon. And kind of what I'm getting is that it may not be just it's not an easy answer to be in this book and to fix, I guess would be the word I'd come up with, what's ever going on, or getting back to your first reality that you were in.
Hmm.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then expanding on that, you mentioned Paranormal Activity earlier, which I think the first movie is brilliant, and I think it gets ragged on because people, oh, nothing happens, and usually those are people watching it at a party with a bunch of people trying to pretend that they're tough and be like, oh, this, like whatever. It's like, oh, you're not scared of a horror movie, great for you, like whatever. But that first movie was incredibly effective if you watched it in the
Hmm.
right mindset and the right environment, without all the overblown hype marketing behind it. But for me, I think it was in the third film, or even the second one, where they second and third movies still have some incredible scare sequences, especially the third one. But once they started saying like, "Oh, it's the firstborn of this family," immediately I'm like, "Oh well, I don't have kids. I probably won't have kids for a very long time. I'm fine. Like I'm not connected to this family." Okay, like now I'm watching a family deal with something that only they have to deal with. But in the first Paranormal Activity, I'm watching this could happen to me. Like you go home after that movie and you don't look at your house the same way as you did
Right.
before. And so once you ascribe it a name, like you said, it's like, okay, now it's something we can banish, it's something we can do X or Y to, then it becomes generally less scary. There's always exceptions to that, but
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think also, and this pertains to the book too, is when you're watching the first Paranormal Activity, there really isn't anything tangible to be scared of, right? Like they do have the one thing I can think of that actively had me scared was the footsteps. So you know there's
Hmm.
something there, but you don't ever see anything. Like you don't see a flying demon or the eyes under the bed, right? You just see these things happen. And in book or in the second movie, you almost do get like a vague outline when dust falls on the entity. But when I was reading this book, that reminded me of it because it's like, well, I can't tangibly say what's scaring me. I can't say if it's Thomas. I can't say if it's the house. I can't say if it's Jenny, like,
Hmm.
or if it's just the basement. Which even if it is the basement, that's not a tangible thing. It's a part of the house,
Hmm.
and I think that's very effective to give the horror and the scary type feel to everything. Because if it were just the demon, then I'd be like, oh, watch out. Like as long as Thomas isn't in the frame, like we're good. You know what I mean? So it just made me more scared. So that's great. Thank
That's what I wanted.
you.
and I just Paranormal Activity keeps inspiring me. But yeah, the other thing for people that are like aspiring horror writers, something I've started doing is imagining that I am writing a low budget horror film. And 9 times out of 10, the decision made on a low budget is scarier than the high budget. Because you think of the things that scare you, like Blair Witch Project or Paranormal Activity,
Hmm.
or even in Hereditary, there's extreme set piece moments. But for me, it's the performance of the mother. Like the way it's like the performance, or it's the it's a light turning on at the end of a hall that shouldn't be on, and it's like that's because those things are relatable. The second you have an endless budget, which you do with writing, it's one of the great things about writing is you can do whatever the hell you want. But the second you start, oh man, the house starts spinning and everything is changing and all the doors and windows are spinning around her, and like if I wrote a scene like that, it might be visually interesting and it might scare some people, but nobody has experienced that happening to them. But everybody's experienced a weird bump in the night or a shadow they thought was something and then it ends up being something else. And those moments really get under the skin. So I think it's something I'm really looking at in all my writing. That doesn't mean I'm not going to have these big set pieces and these big over the top things, because those can be great fun. But especially in the early parts of the story, that kind of low budget horror writing, I find very helpful.
Yeah, like you think you see a child in your basement, and then it's a 6 foot tall.
And it makes everything unstable. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have these situations where you're like, oh, I thought I saw an eye in the wardrobe, and then it's actually a photo or a painting. This happens regularly, and that happens to all of us. Like, you think you see something out of the corner of your eye, and then there's nothing there. And the concept of like that and deja vu is something that a lot of people do spiral about. So I think this book, your book, does a really good job of just making you question. And I think the one thing that I've prepared myself for in terms of your writing is I'm not going to have, well, we've talked about this before, but like not every question will be answered, even some of the small ones. Like you're always going to wonder just little things, because that makes it even more scary.
Yeah, that's part of why it's so all-consuming for so many people. Lastly, is there anything that you are able to say about The Caretaker?
Yeah, I can. I'm working on that one right now. I'm about 65 to 70,000 words into it. It looks like it's going to land around 80,000, which is about 10,000 more than we used to live here, I believe. And it's about a broke college grad who takes on the sketchiest house-sitting job in the world because she's broke and really has no other choice. And I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of where it is right now. It is in the same universe as we used to live here, but it's very much a contained story. And I think readers frustrated with a lack of answers will find this one a bit more satisfying. It still leaves a lot of the unknown up in the air, but it is a much more contained and structural story. Like, it very much has a beginning, middle, and a very, I don't want to say neatly tied up, but there's an ending to it. And it's not, we used to live here very much feels like the start of something larger, and this one feels like a contained story. And yeah, and I'd say it's I'm gonna have to have a pretty hefty content warning at the top of it, because it deals with a lot of, like, if We Used to Live Here is about anxiety, this one is probably about depression and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very emotionally turbulent story, to put it lightly. But I'm very proud of it, and I think it will be I'm really excited. And that one's getting made into a movie as well, and so that's very exciting as well.
I saw that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I think that answers most of our burning questions.
Actually, that answers none of our questions.
No,
but I love that. I'm so excited.
It does give us a little bit more of a structure when it comes to and shuts down some of the theories we have. So I'm very excited. So
let me just add one disclaimer. Anything I say is just, I don't even view myself as an authority on it per se. Like, even though I'm writing this world, I like to think that I'm kind of existing in it as my own theorizer. So I'm not the law, I'm not God, and so if something does contradict a theory that's out there already, that's not necessarily kiboshing it entirely, because what's on the page at the end of the day is what matters. So the author's intent, I can only go so far with that. So, yeah.
Heard, for sure.
So you're not an old god that sees all.
No, definitely not. Quite the opposite.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming to Liz and Liz Get Literary. We will continue to be healthily obsessed with your work and all that you do. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing.
Where can all of our viewers find you on social media?
So I'm on Instagram, just my full name, Marcus Kliewer, with a W, not a V, and I think that's about it. I think I have a Twitter account that's dead, and
I'm pale.
yeah, so just Instagram, and I guess check out the subreddit Old House Archive if you really want to go down a rabbit hole and be even more confused than you were before, then that's the place to go. But
That's an
yeah.
understatement. There's Google Drives. I've seen photos of basements. I've been into the source code of things that I have no business being in.
You've had no business doing anything you've done. You've emailed where it literally says don't send emails.
I've done a lot.
See, this is the difference between like me and her, and we have a friend Bailey. They're like diving deep, and I'm like, clearly we are not supposed to do this. So let's not go into the scary house. Let's not email people we're not supposed to email, because that's how we'll survive.
Well,
Right. You might have a family show up at your door, and you don't want that.
I haven't answered my front door since 2019. I have a Ring doorbell. I just zoom in, and if I've never seen you before, I'm hiding.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I tell my children, I'm like, don't move.
Yeah.
They'll go away.
Oh my gosh.
If you're not following Liz and Let's Get Literary on social media, we are Liz and Let's Get Literary on all platforms. And you can also send us emails, your own conspiracy theories that we can pass along to lizandlizgetlit@gmail.com. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Marcus.
Thanks for having me.